Good evening. Now, I'm kind of praying that... no, you stop echoing. I'm kind of praying that, my audio hasn't been fucked with too much. I did a really quick look, before I started stream to make sure it wasn't. Because about, I don't know, 5 o'clock my time, I step away from the computer to go start cooking myself dinner. And, Windows just decides to restart for updates. And I think I was gone for long enough that whatever time it said, hey, we need to get updating, it just did that automatically. But, thankfully, it seems like the usual shit that happens, adjusting mic volume, resetting defaults, I don't think has happened this time, so maybe I dodged a bullet there. I can only be so lucky. Okay, so, for the first time since I started doing this, back in March or April of 2020, I missed highlighting a VOD. 2 VODs, specifically. And it was the entirety of FF14 6.4 patch that I did. Which included the MSQ and the raid. So I was wrestling with myself of what to do about this, because, like, the VOD is just gone. Like, I haven't recorded locally in a long time, because it was filling up space. And I've probably got to consider doing that again. Maybe for select things. I get really lazy about, like, keeping backups and then ensuring that they get deleted after they go, and I was just managing it as a mess. That's on me, but I can fix that. But in terms of this situation, I was like, well, what the fuck do I do? I don't really want to just replay the MSQ, because that seemed like it's gonna obviously not be my first reaction, and that would take way too much time for it being my first reaction. Because if you include more complex thoughts about the thing, now that I've played through the entire thing, and the length of the MSQ and the raids to begin with, that's a fairly long time. So what I'm gonna try out is we're going to go through the quest log, and I'm going to talk about some things. Because I don't want there to be nothing, but I don't want to dedicate an entire stream to just doing that. So I don't know how this is going to go. I haven't been in this situation before, but fuck it. We're going to try. I have considered doing streams that are just straight up reading the codex that we've been given that just kind of fills in with all the information post 6. Or all old information as of 6.1 as an interesting thing to see if I can pick up anything new. Or even just kind of like doing a big retrospective of where we are at the moment. In fact, you know what? That might be a good thing before 7.0. Just dedicate a stream to that. But yeah, at least for the time being, I need to recap some stuff, and we're going to use the journal to help us with that. I really wish I could stay in G-pose and look at my quest journal, but yeah, I can't. So, we want post. No, we want post. The Dark Throne. Yeah. So this is where we start. And if I think of anything in between these quests, then obviously I'll talk about it, but yeah. Though eager to return to the Void and resume the search for his sister, Varshan has had no choice but to wait for Y'shtola's efforts to bear fruit. As he confesses restlessness at the lack of glad tidings, Zero makes an appearance, albeit one she intends to be brief, as she is heading out to replenish her ether shortly. Somewhat surprisingly, she extends an invitation to you and the Satrap to join her, and so the three of you make your way to the bazaar. Zero's business in the bazaar transpires to be the acquisition... transpires to be... That's an interesting use of that word. I don't think I've ever seen that used like that before. happens to be, or ends up being, transpires to be, is like, I guess that's technically still correct, because it's gesturing at the same thing, but, or is revealed to be. Acquisition of supplementary spice that Merid, I forget how to pronounce that, requires to satisfy Zero's particular tastes. Delighted to find his regular customer in the company of others, the merchant is happy to make your acquaintance and cheerfully suggests you select an additional spice to blend with today's odor. After much deliberation, you make your choice. All that's left is to sample it, and pray your taste buds can weather the coming storm. So I think, if I remember correctly, I specifically picked a spice that was very hot, because that is what I would have gone for. And granted, Zero got enough to knock out a couple, like, the entirety of Merid's Mayhain with it. But, yeah. That's generally what I would have gone for. Because I'm trying to get myself into more spicier food. Not, like, on the extreme end, in terms of, like, you know, fucking ghost peppers or shit like that, but just, like, you know, like spicy curry kind of stuff. Satisfied by your colorful reaction, Zero accepts your selection of spice and proceeds without hesitation to Merid's Mayhain. She doubtless expects you to follow once you have regained your composure. With Zero's blessing, Merid makes a full kettle of intensely spicy curry and offers it to the Mayhain at large. The casualties are considerable, but the people nevertheless appreciate the delicious agony. After watching you and Zero sup on some curry yourself, Farshan suggests delivering a meal to Estinian, whom he suggests has returned to his chambers in Megaduta. Hi, Rizaki. My lack of impulse control won out again. I pulled the trigger on an SF6. I mean, you're better off getting it sooner rather than later. Like, if you were definitely going to get it, or, I mean, obviously, money allowing. But I hope you're doing alright. I still haven't gotten into that yet. I really should. Masala has been delivered and misunderstandings averted by the time Y'shtola and Ryonshe arrive with good news. Yeah, so there was a scene here where we end up finding Estinian who is working out in his little abode, and yeah, he's shirtless and sweating, which is like, I guess the animation team kind of flexing a little bit. No pun. But one of the scenes basically entails Zero, like, kind of realizing Estinian is shirtless and going, should we disrobe as well? And, like, Varshan kind of stepping in. Doing pretty good. Gonna look at some of the characters since my old SF main Poison isn't in the game yet. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, I don't know who I'm gonna main in there. Like, actually, no, I can't talk about that, because I made Newest Girl guess, and I don't want to reveal what I think is gonna be my main until after I've had a chance to work around with things. But yeah, it's always interesting to see people's reactions to a scene that's, like, kind of wordless, because I feel like you get a really good picture into kind of how they think, at least, like, or at least when they're engaging with a narrative, because there was a lot of people that I think... There's a lot more people than I would have realized that kind of leaned in the, oh wow, Zero's attracted to Estinian, whereas I'm like, no, oh my god, y'all. No, that's misunderstanding the situation premium right there. Like, that is not attraction at all. That's just like, he has his shirt off. Is that, are we supposed to? Oh god, I'm so confused. But, yeah. Like, I feel like a lot of people caught on to what that was actually trying to get at, but, like, it's always very funny to see people, like, imprint that onto the situation, I guess. Or, I guess, also see an opportunity in the opposite direction, if you know what I mean. Seems you may have been able to reach Gold. It seems you may be able to reach Golbez and Ejdaia on the 13th moon by way of a gate opened from Mare Lamentorum. Opening said gate will be no small feat, however, as it will require channeling vast amounts of ether to the moon by the way of the Tower of Babel. Much and more must be prepared in order to execute this plan, and so your comrades part ways to attend to their respective tasks. Y'shtola to the moon for preparations, an Asinian to escort Nidhana, and a cohort of alchemists to meet her there. Urianger would have your help readying other necessities, the details of which he is eager to impart. I mean, to be fair, these are the people that took one scene between Y'shtola and Zero, ran away with it. Yeah, but, like, no, I don't agree that's kind of the same thing, though. Because, like, there's a difference between, there's a difference between, seeing potential, like, subtext or, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, there's a difference between seeing subtext that others may not, particularly queer people, obviously, where some terminally straight people may not. I think there's a difference between that and then looking at a scenario where a person is looking at a shirtless person and just completely missing the point of that scene. Like, I think that those are two very different things. And also, not the same group of people that would probably be making that, to be honest. But I digress. I get where you're coming from, I just, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a difference between, like... Yeah, what would I, because I feel like it's got to do with subtext and actual text differences, where, like, one person kind of reads a subtext that, you know, it's not like the most, like, it's not without merit, I think is the thing. Because there are a lot of, like, queer romances written by queer people where it starts off with things like that, right? So people obviously take it in that way because they see connections there. But, like, I feel like that's a more subtle and, like, ooh, like, more interpretationally sound than Zero is looking at a shirtless person and doesn't get why they're shirtless, and people going, she's turned on by Estinian. It's like, no. I think that's a very different kind of, like, not even misreading, but, like... Well, actually, I would more consider the latter a misreading, but anyway, we're not here for me to wax poetic about my interpretations of 14. At least not today. With your course of action decided, Urianger proposes an immediate departure, but Valchans begs a moment to assume his adult form before setting out. After making your own preparations, you meet your comrades at the High Crucible. So, I can't remember if at this point we actually know where we're going. You must attain... Oh, no, it's going to talk about this. To facilitate the opening of the gate, you must acquire sufficient stores of ether, as well as obtain permission to use the Tower of Babel to channel it unto the moon. As Roshan believes the Ilsabad contingent will oblige your request, he proposes that you attend to the ether problem first. Thus do you make your way to the airship, landing, and the journey ahead. The northern island of Harm, off the coast of Old Charlian, is purported to hold substantial ether deposits, which should then suffice for your needs. Alas, access to the isle is restricted, and you must first petition the Forum to grant you leave to travel there. This is, of course, not the first time you've needed to navigate the Charlian bureaucracy, and so you soon find yourself crossing the familiar threshold of the Baldessian Annex in search of your old friend Kryle. Okay, so we did know about, at least that there was a lot of ether in the Isle. Yeah, so we did know of that. The thing I was going to point out there is that, if I remember correctly, the Isle of Harm was the place they were initially going to get ether from to fuel the ship, the Ragnarok, at the end of 6.0. Obviously, we ended up using the Mother Crystal instead. Oh god. I feel like there was something else to that. Fuck it, I'm pretty sure it's not important. You find Kryl deep in conversation with Erenville, who reveals he will be away for an extended period attending a private matter. After hearing the details of your plan, Kryl pledges the support of the students of Baldessian, and Erenville offers the name of a researcher who likely knows how ether was intended to be stored and transferred to the Ragnarok. So buoyed by the support of your friends, you bid them farewell and head to Charlene Hamlet in search of the researcher named Margaret. So, there's one, I think, important thing that happens here that's not mentioned in the log here. As people are leaving, the scene of this like little last paragraph hangs on Kryl for a little bit, where she wanders over to all her mess of paperwork, and her eye is drawn to a curious-looking envelope with like very intricate markings on it. And I'm talking like if you imagine a regular kind of envelope, square, and like the flap covering it that you would usually open up, being on top of most of it, covering most of it. That triangle had like a lot of like intricate kind of markings on it, and not like the kind of stuff that's just like ink writing or something like that. It looked the equivalent of like architectural kind of like imprints on it, but like really complicated. I don't know if there's like anything in my vicinity that might like make a good equivalent of that. No, it doesn't look like it. But either way, that seems to be hinting at something. Someone has sent Kryl a letter, presumably, and she seems distracted by it for a moment before she kind of goes back to it. Well, we'll get to that. But important to note that that's there. Margaret's exuberant joy... Oh, Margaret, by the way, for those who have played Endwalker 6. Well, I mean, I hope you're not watching this if you haven't. But Margaret is the researcher in Charlian that when you're finding the 8 people to talk to the Luprits, is like completely sleep deprived, but like strangely energetic. She's a fun character, and it was great to revisit her specifically because basically she's like, oh yeah, I had a great sleep and now the rush is over and I'm honestly feeling kind of flat, which is it's just a fucking amazing contrast to her character where she's like doing the fucking T-pose dance at you when like, when you ask her how she's doing. She's like, I'm fine. Why do I not look fine? This is exhilarating. Followed by the line, she only sleep can save her now. Fucking love that character. Margaret's exuberant joy at being free of the burden of unconscionable deadlines is as disturbing as it is relatable. She explains that shipping your ether will be no different from than shipping wine, provided you avail yourself of the ether tanks once destined for the Ragnarok. Failing to recall what became of them after the final days were averted, Margaret instead directs you to a colleague who should know where to find them. A man who should be wearing a conspicuous outfit boasting of his recent vacation. In this sea of subdued fashions, such a radically dressed researcher should be easy enough to spot. Kokol Dankol's shirt is indeed a clarion call proclaiming to all and sundry that he has forsaken work for an altogether too brief time. After a quick chat, he agrees to lend you the ether tanks without hesitation, though he laments that he can do nothing to grease the wheels of the forum, which ever turns slowly. As is his wont, however, he elects to describe such said tendencies in a rather more inelegant fashion, only to be corrected by a stone-faced Fortuner who arrives in the company of Kryl and Skolak Monteshane. I ought to read these more, actually. I expected a lot more of this writing to be a bit more flat. Like, obviously the Dark Knight quest log is important, right? But I didn't realize that a lot of the MSQ is actually, like, kind of, like, recounted well, not energetic. What's the word I'm looking for here? just not in a boring way. Like, it's not just matter-of-factly telling you what's going on, it's talking about the energy of the people, the, you know, the moods they're in, like, going out of its way to paint a picture rather than just, like, instructions. Like, recounting instructions, if that makes sense. Also, this explanation also misses out the transcendental fucking line from Fortuno. I can assure you my backside is immaculate. Anyway. The forum has passed a favourable verdict, states Fortuno, on the sole condition that you slay whatever fearsome beasts you encounter during your expedition to the Isle of Harm. Your transportation to the island has also been arranged. The vessel awaits you in the Scholar's Harbour. The captain is ready to depart, but Urianger bids you wait a short while. It seems an additional member of the party is late, but before you can inquire as to their identity... Actually, you know what? I'm gonna increase the scale of this so, like, it's obvious what I'm reading. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. It seems this additional member of the party is late, but before you can inquire as to their identity, Thancred announces himself. Bolstered by your charismatic companion, you are ready to challenge the 8th front. Dungeon dialogue, or duty dialogue, rather. Though you are forced to contend with countless beasts flush with the Isle's abundant ether, they pose little challenge to you and your comrades. Actually, yeah, this is a good time to talk about the dungeon. I really like this dungeon. I think, first off, it has, like, one of the best bosses in the entire game, which is basically, like, a, axolotl with a head. Well, actually, no. It looks like the Gaia Online llama, but an axolotl. That's pretty much it. It is permanently in a face. It's fucking wonderful. Yeah, I really like this dungeon. I've healed it, like, a fair few more times now. I haven't reached it on any other characters, but, yeah, just, like, really solid dungeon. I think it has, like, the best, like, array of bosses, too. They're starting to work a lot more like, unintuitive tells for mechanics as well. So, things like, the icebergs that shoot out of the ground when the, first boss does its thing. There are short ones, which, when it hits the ground again, will resonate, fairly quickly and then break and explode. And then there are longer ones, which will take a little bit more time to explode, because it's harder for them to resonate that hard, but they will explode bigger. So what happens is, it teaches you the short ones, it teaches you the big ones, and then it overlaps both of them, so you have to kind of, like, look for your safe spots either way. Like, it's not an uncommon thing throughout the game, but, like, it coming more into regular dungeons, I think, is a thing that I like. The steady, like, increase in difficulty over the dungeons of the entire game is always something I've really enjoyed, and seeing more and more, like, little things that are, like, that take you a bit more of a second, and, like, aren't always as, like, straightforward as earlier dungeons is always it's always great to see stuff like that. We also did a Kraken boss, which we haven't had a good one of. I mean, there's a quest I've done. There's a dungeon I've done as part of the quest chain that I didn't think I actually completed. Because I've never done any of it on stream, but I think I might need to now. Where there is a Kraken fight, and it's awful. This one? Pretty good. Also, a good use of unintuitive tells as well, where there are tentacles that raise up on this, so there's like a crescent-shaped kind of, platform, with like, big circles at each section making up the actual platform, in a crescent shape. And tentacles will just show up on parts of the platform, and they won't show you their AoEs immediately, but you can kind of infer it. They're going to be hitting generally through to the center of the platforms they're aiming at, and not all of the platforms are going to be safe. In fact, there are plenty of overlaps, even on the safe platforms, and you have to be really careful of that. Again, just, yeah. it's it's first introduced, and then it's accompanied by basically what is like a 2/3 arena hit. And like if you're reading it, if you really understand how the tentacles are going to kind of like cleave the arena, really easy. But the first couple of times it's going to be like okay, well, I can see there are less tentacles over there, so I'm going to run over there. And then when the AoEs come up, I should be looking for the gap, and then you know to look for the gap next time. Nice combination of like being bad if you really don't read it at all, but like you're not gonna die if you are quick on the draw there. Yeah, good dungeon. I do enjoy with this patch they're experimenting with arena shape. I called that was probably going to happen when they announced the buff heal range increases. It just gives them leeway to do whatever they want with arenas. Yeah, as well as stuff like P12, where the arena is like pretty... Well, the arena is restricted in a lot of ways, but people can just be across it. So like, yeah, no. I think those increases are really good. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish they gave you a, like, they don't need to make it 30 yards, but I wish they gave you just a little bit more range with the AoE heals. MP10 with 2 sides bit you can bridge over 2. That's right, yeah. They're, like, P10's arena is really wide, but yeah, we'll get to that. Fuck, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. I wish there was just a little bit more range on the heals now. I can still see, like, some little bit of that, where, like, okay, look, we don't want healers to be in such a bad position that they absolutely need to be in the right places to use big cooldowns, especially. But we kind of need... You kind of shouldn't just be able to, like, heal an entire 50-yard radius, you know? Like, I think that still makes sense, but, like, just bump it up a little bit. Bump it up a little bit. Bard Song's got a range, I got a mic, yeah. Nevertheless, the memory of the terrors which slumbered in the depths may linger for a time. In any event, you are free to rest and gaze into the mesmerizing undulations of the geyser while you wait for Kokol Dankol's airship to arrive. Thanks to Kokol and his engineers, you succeed in harvesting a sufficient supply of ether. After observing Thangrid Council Zero on the concept of trust, you leave the tanks in Kokol's charge and travel to Old Sharlayan. Yeah, so one thing I think is important to point out here is that Zero has come along for this, but one of the things I think it's Oriange that kind of like starts pointing it out is like, I mean, there's a lot, or no, I think it might be Varshan actually. But basically, like, the characters are kind of... Zero is, like, starting to put things together, but is, like, still struggling with, like, the more complex stuff, like, just trust, for example. And I think Thancred is one of the first people that talks to Zero directly about this, where he's kind of, like... Thancred makes an offhand remark about, it doesn't seem like you needed me, and then Zero's like, why would you downplay what you're doing? And Thancred effectively says, well, I trust my friends. I feel like they could do that without me. Like, you know, not that I'm complaining about helping or anything, or suggesting I didn't contribute, but they can handle themselves. I trust them. And it starts a thread where Zero is really trying to grasp, like, the more complicated sides of, like, the I guess, void sense side of things, where she's, they've already been kind of, like, piecing together, like, you know, what is it to have a friend, some, like, really basic stuff, like, what is play when 2 kids in, fucking, Radzat Han, make the comment around her, and something that I think is interesting about the writing here, I'm not necessarily going to say bad, because I don't dislike it. It's getting very direct, but I feel like the reason it gets a pass for me is that, like, they need to be direct with Zero. Zero's not the kind of character to kind of, like, get the subtleties of it in such a way that you could write this scene in a way where the point is subtle, and Zero would still get it. Like, and I'm interested to see what other people's opinions of that is, because for me at least, like, I'm more than willing to go along with stuff like that. I think being direct with a character like this is honestly kind of refreshing, even if it can come off as a bit like ham-fisted, like, oh really, that's the point of the quest, and it's kind of like, yeah, we're dealing with a person who doesn't know about human emotion. What? We're supposed to be subtle about it, and expect her to get it? Like, I imagine it could like rub people the wrong way, but like, yeah, that's definitely still a thing. And I don't particularly like think it's a bad thing. Another thing that's interesting to note here is once Thancred finishes talking to Zero, Thancred walks over to Ryonje and begins talking about that invitation, quote unquote. And it sounded like they were looking for Archons. So this isn't whatever they're talking about in particular, not a Scion call out. They're looking for Archons of Sharlayan, if not like people who, or if not determined to basically be, I mean, Archon. Well, if they're not specifically looking for Archons, they're looking for people who are as qualified in some ways that they might as well just be Archons from our perspective. Which might be related to that letter that Kryl had. The one thing it's being simultaneously, like, not vague but not subtle about is this thing, but I'll get to that at the end. Thancred's brief time with you is at an end, sadly, as the bard must take his leave and return to his other responsibilities. With your first objective complete, you turn to Oriange, who will guide you in the next step of your plan to open a new void gate. Wow. Really? Are you serious? Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize only the, ones with portraits got, like, a full explanation. Okay, that's fine. Time to proceed to the next stage of your plan. So, we got the ether. Time to go to Garlemald and turn on the Tower of Babel. But we talked to Lucia about the plan, because basically Varshan is like, hey, we should probably run this by them to let them know that this is happening. And Lucia and Maxima basically go, okay, yeah, like, we want to allow that, but, like, you realize you're going to turn on the tower that, like, turned everyone not too long ago to the people who are still picking up their lives together and likely traumatized by all this. And yeah, that makes sense. So we go and meet up with Alphino and Alize in Tertium to kind of discuss, because obviously we kind of want to get an idea of what the vibe is. Would people actually freak out if the Tower of Babel went off? And we end up talking to the people of Tertium a fair bit, like, discussing what's going on. Oh my god, fuck, I feel like my brain was going to, and then Zero goes out to try and save the Void Scent, but no, that's like 6.3 or something. No, that is 6.3, not 6.4, Jesus. So yeah, we question the people of Tertium, and it's mixed, to say the least. There's a couple of people who are, like, negative to neutral about it. Like, one person in particular is like, are you crazy? But there is, like, one or two people who are like, I mean, y'all have been pretty good to us, so, like, I'm, like, if you reckon it's what's needed. And there's one person who's actively supportive. And I think what happens then is, Alphino goes off to a different camp to talk to the leaders of the Garleans that have kind of remained in the city. and 2 of them come out to talk with us, which is where this quest ends. And they're basically like,
No.
wait, but I mean, this would really like help us. Like, we've kind of got to solve a thing that's.
No, we're not letting you control the tower. That's ours. It used to be ours. It's ours now. We're not letting you set foot.
So, understandably, the Garlean leaders are hesitant to let us go through with our plan just willy-nilly, like we own the place. In particular, they cite that, like, listen, that place meant a lot to us, and we can't just, or we feel like no, they straight up say, we're not letting you just traipse in like you own the place, because you don't. It's ours. So we're not doing it. We're not giving you that privilege. And we're kind of like, yeah, okay, that does make sense. And Varshan's like, okay, you know what? We'd still like you to talk with us about this, but I don't know anything about your people's worries at the moment, and I want to hear them out. I don't want to just waltz in here and tell you what to do. I want to understand. So we end up going to a place called Senatus, which is a little bit better set up than Tertium, and is home to some people who were a bit higher up in both, I think, the legions and just society in general, from memory. I think you do a bit more talking around here, and they seem to be a bit more, like, sheltered from what the rest of the contingent has been doing. They seem to be a lot more skeptical of any foreign intervention, especially that of the people who are already here, because some of them, I think, if I recall correctly, still kind of see them as like a cause for what might have happened or aggravating factors, whatever. During this time, we go back to meet up with everyone, and we overhear an argument between an Ilsabard contingent person and one of the, I think, guards of Senatus. And it basically boils down to the contingent is supplying supplies to Senatus and Tertium, but the problem is that they're trying to move them through a way that runs into a lot of machina. And they're asking permission of the Garleans to, like, destroy it or shut it down, because, they're just killing people. Or they're making the, path between the contingent and Senatus and even Tertium far more dangerous. So, in that discussion, Varshan... Or, no, it's Zero, actually, who's like, oh, I see. They don't have equitable terms, so they can't come to an agreement. That makes sense to me. I mean, you don't... Like, as Void sent, that's unheard of. Like, you can't... Like, you can only reach an agreement on equitable terms. Like, of course you can't. And Varshan kind of, like, a light bulb goes off in his head, and he's like, oh, I think I might actually have a way of solving this. So... you call the leaders of Senatus to Tertium. I had a very sort of cynical, I guess, can't think of a better word right now, approach to that moment. We can't use the tower? Cool, you deal with the next Void Sent attack then, because I won't. Well, I mean... yeah, like, again, I'm of two minds of it. Like, I can absolutely see, like, hey... You don't just get a run of the place. But at the same time, the way they talk about that is very much a territorial, still fascistly minded kind of mindset of like, no, we're not letting foreigners into here to control this. It's like, okay, A, we saved y'all, but B, we're not looking to just, like, take the place. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. We would like to use it temporarily, but... I get where you're coming from with that, but I think, like, the key here is that, like, yeah, they do start out very obstinate, but that's specifically because of the thing that Zero points out. The contingent is the one that always has the power over everyone else, and they're resentful of that, and I think to an understandable degree. they can't really argue with the contingent. And they'll use whatever hand they are dealt to actually, like, try and muster power over it to be more equitable. So if they hold the tower over your head as like no, you can't have this, they actually have something you want, and thus, you know, whether they know it or not, it was veering towards that kind of thing. Which is why I think it's interesting that Zero is the one that points that out, because it is a very, like, basic rudimentary thing that people in the situation just weren't seeing. Like, the way this has been set up so far is that obviously Zero has a lot to learn, but like, I like that there's a bit of texture to this where, like, Zero's perspective also helps out everyone else, because she can see the really foundational things that are absent to be able to make, like, agreements and stuff like that with the Garleans. And, as it turns out, it leads to Varshan proposing a trade agreement between Radzat-Han, or between, is it just Radzat-Han? I forget. Also, hi Husky, how's it going? It leads to a moment where Varshan proposes a trade agreement with Radzat-Han and Garlemald. They would provide, I think basic supplies and spices and things like that, and in return, they would provide, or Garlemald would provide Radzat-Han with, like, technology and Magitech insight and things like that. And one of the leaders at Senatus actually is like, oh, well, yeah, that actually would put us in a better position to just, like, be able to, like, negotiate and things. Because if we're not relying on the contingent for things, then we can have actual discussions with other nations, and things like that. The other leader is like, what? How could you possibly think that? Our Magitech is, like, our key thing. Like, we can't just go giving that away. And the first one turns to him and goes, dude, we've got nothing. The Magitech is the stuff we do have. And if it puts us in a better position to be able to negotiate later, this is better than just relying on the contingent. The contingent is basically relying on charity. We can't rely on that forever. We need a better solution. Then the second leader runs off and almost gets killed by Magitech, and oh, geez, wow. Turns out the savages actually saved me. Oh my god. Wow, maybe I was a bit of a stick in the mud when it came to that. And Euless comes around with a pretty, like, incisive statement about how, like, we can't... Oh, fuck. I actually forget what his point was, but it leads to the second leader of Senatus basically saying, oh, being lectured by the young is, like, reflects poorly on my station or something, where it's like, yeah, actually, maybe that's kind of the fucking point, that your mindset is so poisoned that you can't listen to the young about shit like this. Anyway, you go back to speak to Maxima to tell them about the deal. Yeah, I'm doing good, Husky. I lost a VOD, so I'm sitting here recapping stuff I played through. So there's something committed to video. So it's not just there's a patch of content missing from my 14 playthrough. So, you know, that's fun. I am kind of enjoying going back through this though, because I had thoughts that I didn't have when I was playing it at the outset. So, yeah, Euless is, yeah, and then we go back to Maxima. We tell them the agreement. We're like, okay, cool, we should be good. And I think Urianges finally comes back saying, hey, I think we're ready at the tower. So, oh no, sorry, I skipped a bit. So, rewind. Metius, who is the second leader of Senatus, actually leaves here. So we speak with Metius and he kind of fucks off. Incensed that Neus would even consider trading Garlean technology to a foreign nation for currency and supplies, Metius storms out of Tertium before talks can begin in earnest. Knowing that it is not safe for a civilian to traverse the wastes unattended, you and your allies venture forward to search for the magistrate. Your timing is impeccable as you find Metius cowering before an advancing war machina, clearly intent upon doing him serious harm. You make short work of the contraption and save the magistrate's life. But it remains to be seen if he suffered more than mere scrapes and bruises in his panic to escape. Even after such a harrowing experience, Metius regards you and your comrades with disdain. Seeing this Euless... Seeing this, Euless implores the proud patriot to look beyond the glories of the past and accept the reality of their situation, that the Garlean people might build stronger ties with outsiders and improve their lot. Moved by this heartfelt appeal, Medius apologizes for his behavior and resolves to rejoin the talks at Tertium. But the magistrate is not the only one whom Euless' words appear to have struck a chord, as Zero bids the soldier explain how he wielded trust so deftly and bound the magistrate. Puzzled, Euless corrects her misconception and credits his success to the infectious nature of trust. When someone believes in you, it makes you want to believe in them, in others, in yourself. Zero recalls a moment from her own past when a major knight once implored her to trust in them and join in the fight to end the Contra Memoria. Alas, she could not bring herself to do so and instead refused them outright. I would like to note here that the mage in this scenario looks an awful lot... has the same armor as Golbez. Just curious. Though she fears she may lack the capacity to place her faith in another... alas, she could not bring us... Yeah. Though she fears she may lack the capacity to place her faith in another, Euless states that what she could not do yesterday, she may yet do today. That so long as we yet live, there is cause to hope. For has she not already learned to forge bonds with you and your comrades? And a friend by any other name would be as deserving of trust. Thus does Euless extend his hand to her in friendship, and reaffirm that he regards her as a comrade. Also, no, we haven't heard voices yet. That's for later. Upon returning to Tertium, you find the station filled with representatives of the various settlements scattered through Garlemald. With Metius's consent, Neus announces to all in attendance that they will enter a trade agreement with Razatan. By virtue of this partnership, you and your allies will be afforded permission to access the Tower of Babel, bringing you one step closer to reaching the Void and saving Ajdaia. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, this is a relatively, oh, really? Oh, no, it's this one that goes into... Yeah. Okay, so, we go back to the moon. We talk to Y'shtola, and they seem to be doing alright. Basically, they're fixing the brands that once held, Fair continues, puts feet up and grabs a drink. Yep. It's story time. Spoilers, because I'm not going to be able to avoid any of them. So, we're on the moon, and the brands that broke Helding Zodiac together have been repaired, or are being repaired, by Y'shtola and the Alchemist with the help of the Watcher. And, things are looking pretty good. There is one worry, however, that obviously, we are opening a gigantic portal to the Void, the 13th. What if something tries to go back through the portal we opened? Yeah, it's probably not good. So, we implore the Loprits... well, actually, that's part of the reason the brands are being repaired, because they can presumably be able to bring up a shield that should be able to deflect Void Scent. However, there are a lot of ifs in play. Zodiac was never fully reformed, and we don't know if there's anything stronger that might be able to have sway over that. We don't know if other Void Scent will even be repelled by the shield. There's a lot of question marks over that. So, we would have a backup plan, and so we go to the Loprits. The Loprits have a lot of robots that can be used for combat, so we're like, okay, can we make sure these can actually fight Void Scent? Living Way's like, well, yeah, I guess we can try. We need to, like, train them somehow, and Zero's like, don't worry, I got this. Basically reveals that she has dark power by, like, aura and shit. And half of the robots flee, which isn't great. Then Living Way's like, or whoever is commanding the robots at the time says, well, don't just stand there, attack. And then Zero dismantles the other half. So, it didn't go perfectly, but, we're kind of getting there. They at least got the experience, and that's the important point. They already picked up some pointers they might need if they're actually going to face Void Scent. Cool. We might have accomplished what we needed to do. believe it was Sleeping Way. Yeah, it was probably Sleeping Way. I remember that dopey voice coming up sometime in this patch. Okay. That seemed to have passed our expectations for defense, or at least will exceed our things for defense. And, then... Hang on, I'm gonna see where this starts. Okay, yeah, I know where to stop for this one. So, we go back to Y'shtola, and they fix the drowning brand. Awesome. Then we have our little montage of, Y'shtola and Urianger, Y'shtola calling on, Alphino and Alize to fire the tower to shoot the ether up to the moon. The ether gets shot up into the moon. It hits the chasm, where Zodiac once, lay, and both Urianger and, Y'shtola start chanting. Void portal opened. Some little void scent wanders in and then gets immediately bitch-slapped by the barrier, so cool. That seems to have held for the time being. Curious, though. There's nothing else really coming through? And with the way that other portals have worked in the source, whenever something to the 13th opens, there's a lot of shit trying to get through. In fact, we have an explicit example of that in 6.1, I think it is. When the portal is first opened, like, within minutes, there are void scent flying through. And this is a gigantic portal, and nothing's flying through. So that's kind of weird. But then again, considering Golbez has remained hidden, it's possible that void scent can't actually get to the moon. Half of the reason that we're actually doing a portal on the moon is that if we did a portal on Etheris, Hydaelyn, we'd end up on the planet in the 13th, whereas Golbez is on the moon. And we don't even know if there's a way to get to the moon from the 13th's planet. So instead we portaling on the 13th. So it makes sense that there's no void scent here, because they can't get there. Golbez has been the only one that has. And so, we enter the 13th and land on the moon. To free Ysdaia from her prison, and you must hunt down and defeat her captor, Golbez. To that end, your comrades have already begun surveying the surrounding area for clues as to his whereabouts. Having chosen her section, Zero bids you assist by concentrating on a portion of the lunar surface to the south. After stumbling upon a memoria during your search, you find yourself immersed in, strangely familiar memories through the power of the echo. Oh, this doesn't actually tell us about us going into the crater. Okay, so when Zero and the Warrior of Light are looking over the crater, they notice, hey, there's structures down there. Maybe they're down there. We fly down with Vritra, who is Varshan shaking off his human form. Or bipedal form, I guess. And we go down there and we return her eye, which had been initially taken by Cagnazzo, sorry. And she wakes up and basically gives us a little bit of info about what's been happening. So, no one has been able to break the barrier around her, first of all. And the only way you can break that is via the chains. Or via, killing Golbez. Golbez has to release it, either by his death or purposefully. She also mentions that, after flying through the portal originally, that Golbez actually made a deal with her. It's hey, and he's hey, the ether in the 13th is going to claim you. It will claim you eventually. I can protect you from that, but at a price. And so, Ysdaia agrees to the deal, and what it essentially is that Golbez protects her, so she's good, but his commanders are going to feed on her ether. Not killing her, but, empowering them at the very least. The other thing she notes is that, Golbez doesn't leave here often. He, works through his minions, and we know that, through cutscenes where, Golbez is, speaking through stones and stuff like that. There doesn't ever seem to be anyone that, personally meets him. But he does keep going to the surface every now and then and heads to the north, which is, back from where we came.
So we wander on over there, and we find, like, a makeshift grave with a Memoria crystal. After stumbling upon a Memoria during your search, you find yourself immersed in strangely familiar memories through the power of the Echo. The memories involve a mysterious mage and his comrade, Durante. So, to be clear, this is from the POV of the mage, and Durante, a man that sounds suspiciously like Golbez, is with him. And it shows that, well, I'll talk about this and maybe add to it if I need to. The self-same pair you came to realize who once attempted to befriend Zero in the distant past of the 13th. Unfortunately, before Zero can draw any conclusions from this discovery, Golbez makes his dramatic appearance. So, if I remember correctly, the scene is Durante and Golbez, like, helping, like, a small village town from people who are empowering themselves via Memoria crystals. Or Memoria crystals. Captured Void Sent, essentially. Or captured monsters. They're not technically Void Sent. And they kind of have a discussion about, like, oh, geez, this sucks, doesn't it? And, like, Golbez is, like, a fairly, not devout, but, like, honorable man or honorable person by all definitions. They seem to be very, like, deferent, even when taking lives, to be like, I hope you can find happiness now that you're dead, basically. Because, like, a lot of them were, like, basically drunk on power, and, like, yeah. Durante basically says as much as saying, like, wow, you're a better man than I am, because, like, I don't give a shit about I don't give as much of a shit about this whole thing as you seem to do. Which raises some questions, because, like, Golbez is here, wearing armor that looks like the one the mage in our POV was wearing. But then Durante sounds like Golbez? But the person in the armor, it, like, can't be that same person. They must have been sealed away or something, so fuck's going on there? Anyway, then a wild Golbez appear. Holding Ajdaya aloft, he proceeds to release her from his spell, leaving her at the mercy of the ambient darkness, which flows into her very being. You can but watch in horror as the Great Worm is transformed into a Stygian void sent. Golbez declares the Shadow Dragon. With Ritra's desperate plea still ringing in your ears, it falls to you to put an end to Golbez's plot and save Ajdaya. So, once you, oh my god, words. Once Ajdaya turns, Golbez orders her to kill Vritra, and then a bunch of Void Sent get the rest of the party kind of mixed up. Vritra, like, is defeated by the Shadow Dragon, basically because, like, he doesn't want to hurt his own sister. And then Golbez separates us from the party and says, I'm gonna beat you up. I know a strong person when I see them, and you're fucking strong. I'm dealing with you personally. And that's where we have the Voidcast Dais. You have faced many formidable opponents, and Golbez is no exception. Nevertheless, you emerged victorious in the duel to decide Ajdaya's fate. Darkness recedes from Golbez as he kneels in defeat, and you can only hope that you have finally put his madness ambitions to rest. So, I really like this trial. It also has, like, a mechanic I don't think I've seen in normal content before. So, like, non-extreme savage stuff like that. Which is, like, people need to be in multiple towers, but, like, basically a cut kind of thing where everyone is going to get pushed away, and you need to make sure there's enough on each side to do it. There's mechanics that are kind of like this in terms of, like, earlier ones, where, like, you have a really long time to make sure each of you hit a certain spot with a certain amount of people. But this one resolves, like, really quickly, and is then followed up by proximity AoEs, and a tether that shoots, like, a column AoE out. Like, that is honestly one of the tightest mechanic checks I've seen in a normal trial. Yeah, I think that might be one of the tightest mechanics checks I've seen in it. Like, you don't get knocked out and it immediately resolves, like it would in, like, an Extreme or a Savage or something like that, but it's, like, close enough, and it follows up with, like, some mechanics that you can legitimately fuck everyone up with, that, like, I haven't seen before. So, Again, difficulty slowly going up, and it continues to do so. I really like that fight, though. That's probably the trial I think I wiped to the most post, like, being on top of being able to play the game well. Like, Seed of Sacrifice, I think, is still, like, one of the fights I, like, died on the most, because, like, I fucking sucked at recognizing what the hell was going on. Yeah, that fight has a lot of stuff to it that'll catch you off guard if you're not careful, which I really appreciate. Victory is short-lived, as Golbez reveals that his plan from the very start was to infuse Azhdaya with Zodiac's residual ether, and birth a void sent wholly consumed with the desire to breach the barrier between worlds, an entity he has named after an ancient hero of the 13th, Zeromus. Okay, two things here. First, I forgot to say that, yeah, when we're going down to check on Azhdaya, Y'shtola notes that she can, like, sense the ether of, Zodiac, but, like, it's really incomplete. Like, it's not the thing that was on the moon. It seems to be, like, a residual thing, but she can't tell if it's been absorbed, if it's in another void sent, like, what's going on. So there's a question mark as to whether, like, did Golbez absorb it? Is it still there to be used? And as it turns out, yeah, it does. Also, this is the bit where I pause, because we've now named the Void Sent Zeromus. Or actually, I don't know if this is actually going to cover it. Hang on, I'm going to see if a certain cutscene is described in the quest text here. No, it's not. Okay, so this is probably the best time to talk about it. So, well, actually, let me get through this and then I'll talk about it. The oppressive shroud of darkness emanating from the entity prompts Vritra to call for a swift withdrawal, and so you make good your escape to the source. Not before Zero, by the way, drops the Moriat we found at the grave into the void goop of Zeromus. That is going to come back. That is very important. Alas, while your intention was to return in triumph, you have instead been forced to retreat in failure. Silence hangs heavy as your allies reflect upon recent events and weigh their options. Now that Azhdaya has become the vessel for the Void Sent Zeromus, is there no saving her? So, the name Zeromus comes up, and I'm like, okay, I know that's an FF4 thing, and people were obviously thinking that Zero turns into Zeromus. That's not what's happened here. So I'm just gonna assume that Zeromus has no connection to Zero proper, right? I am curious whose name is who here, because my initial thought was, okay, Durante and Golbez work together. Something happens to Golbez and he needs to be sealed away. Durante takes up the armor and name of Golbez because something. I was thinking maybe he absorbed his ether at some point because they were Void Sent at some point. It turns out I think this happens before the whole Void Sent thing happens, where the 13th goes to shit. So when that was deconfirmed, I was like, oh, okay. Is Golbez like a different name entirely then? Because and I was also thinking about the whole Zodiac thing for Golbez, where, like, his need to go to the source was actually born of that. But as it turns out, that was the very... I felt clever... I didn't feel clever until I really thought about it later, but I absolutely called the fact that, like, but I placed that on Zodiac, I think, which was kind of out there. Like, I had all of the pieces, like, cut up in different ways than they should have been. But I felt like I was like, oh, fuck, I was actually kind of close. Without, like, literally stating things that happened. But calling the Void Sent Zeromus is where I'm a little confused, because Golbez goes on to talk about, or reflects on having to banish their friend, and saying that I swore that day that people will remember the name Golbez as the hero who broke the wheel. And, like, that makes me think that the person traveling with Durante was literally named Golbez, because this Durante basically takes up the name of his friend to, to basically make him the person who saves the world. Like, as out of respect to him, basically. Which, yeah, that's a cool motivation, and kind of lines up with what, Rubicante told us about him. But Zeromus is the bit that I'm confused about. Because I would have assumed, like, again, my knee-jerk reaction is to think, maybe that was Zero's real name, and she doesn't know, and she doesn't know it, and Golbez knows of that name because it's kind of legendary. But that wouldn't really make sense in terms of the time. Like, he's talking about an ancient hero, but I don't know if this is, like, ancient hero of the 13th, like, even way before the calamity befell the 13th and turned it into the Void. I don't know how back it's talking. Would non-Void sent Zero remember who Zeromus is? That's where I'm curious, because I don't know if this is just plucking the name out because everyone will know it, or if there's actually a reason and like, we just can't figure it out yet. Anyway, excuse me while I take a drink. As you and your comrades presently are presently ill-equipped to face a Void Sent of Zeromus' might, Y'shtola asks that you apprise Urianger of the situation while she tends to Vritra's wounds. Though troubled by this turn of events, Urianger reassures you that the containment seal should forestall Zeromus' invasion for a time, as the Brands were resilient enough to hold Zodiac in his prison since the sundering of the star. Be that as it may, since the Brands were repaired in haste and the true potential of a dragon become Void Sent is unclear, there is no telling how long you can afford to rely on this last line of defense. For now, Urianger vows to maintain his vigil over the seal with the Loporits and the Watcher, while you work alongside your allies in Razathan to devise a plan to combat this unprecedented threat. The mood in Megaduta is as grim as it was in the Void, with the failure to save Ejdiah still painfully fresh. Vritra is a prisoner of his melancholy, until Zero, of all people, gives him and the others a reason to cling to hope. In recalling the fate of Farfarello, the cowardly Void Sent who was devoured by his comrade, Chiriato, she explains that when a Void Sent dies, the souls it once harbored may break free, and become individual entities once more. And so, when the time comes to lay low Zeromus, she urges Vritra to call out to his sister, that she may find the strength to endure and be restored to life. Y'shtola further bolsters the spirits of all present when she announces her plan to harness the Thirst's resplendent light to counter Zeromus' impenetrable darkness. This undertaking will require much time and preparation, and in the interim, Estinian and Zero resolve to devote their energies to training for the battles that await. Heartened by Zero's words, Valshan reaffirms his desire to save his sister, and asks that you continue to lend him your strength until the Great Worm is finally free. The day is fast approaching when Zero's theory must be put to the proof, and you can but hope that Ejdiah's soul is not beyond salvation. And that was the end of 6.4. I don't think too much happens in the following cutscenes that I haven't already covered, because it's basically just flashing back to Golbez. I really like this patch. I really like going back to Garlemald and kind of, like, reaffirming that things are still shit here, and it's going to take time and effort and compassion to actually sort things out. Like, things aren't just done there, and it's just, oh, okay, humanitarian aid, and we're all good. Like, there are still, like, deep problems with, the way people perceive Garlemald, the way Garlemald perceives everyone else. A lot that needs to be fixed. One of the things I have seen a lot about this patch, though, is that it probably would have been better as the 6.3 finale, and, like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that's the case. I think people are in that mindset because we haven't had, like, a crescendo to this whole, like, post-patch thing. Because usually it's like, you finish 6.0, it ends on a high note. You finish 6.3, it ends on a high note. And then we have 2 patches setting up the next one and, start at first instruction. I don't think this is bad. I think this is giving it the gravity it deserves. And, like, we're getting a lot of parallel things happening here with, like, treating with Garlemald and how that's doing, because yeah, it's still in a bad way. Like, we've been back there twice, but we've been fixing different things at the same time. Also, I do appreciate that the game just doesn't kind of band-aid fix a lot of stuff. Like, when we go to use the Tower of Babel, it would have been easy to just go, oh yeah, the Garleans are going to let us do that. Whereas, like, no, they kind of wouldn't. Also, that's the thing that they think caused all their problems, so, like, no, I don't think they're going to be okay with us fucking around with it. I do really appreciate that. I'm like, I get that, like, not having, like, a big finale or a big, second finale in 6.3's probably got people kind of itching for something, or wishing there was something bigger in 6.3, but honestly, I think with trying to build up to another expansion that they don't have as much, or that they're going to set forth with newer stories and things like that, I don't think it's a good idea to rush that, and I think having the Dark Throne and stuff like that resolved in 6.3 actually would have been bad, in my opinion. It probably would have rushed too much stuff with the Void Sen, if I'm being honest. As for future stuff, like, it very much seems like, I think Ryuzaki called it before, but, like, there's definitely some pointers to, like, some hints that people are going to be looking for, or some people are seeking out people like the Scions to help with something. And if we manage to get Azhdaya back, I would probably put money on the fact that she would go back to Mericidia first as one of the first things she does, because that would make sense. So, yeah, I would bet we probably save Azhdaya, and that gives us reason to go back to Mericidia to basically, like, explore what's going down there, because, Azhdaya is going to be curious about it, since she basically gave her life to defend them from the Alligans. We're obviously curious about it, and there seems to be a third party who's recruiting people who might be related to something like that. So, yeah, that might even be a second continent. They might do, like, a dual continent thing for the rest of the game. Like, who knows? But, or for the next expansion, and see that as a better kind of, like, way of structuring things. But, yeah. 6.4 good. There's my very short review. Okay.